For me, productivity is the feeling of what you want to accomplish just flowing out into the world. And so whatever is impeding that is a barrier to productivity. Apple, Google, Samsung, everybody is trying to charge towards this future where you can talk to your phone and it does things for you. The one thing that I think is unique about our industry is that XR, like rules get thrown out the window a lot of times. That stuff that works on a phone does not work in XR and vice versa. Our philosophy is that you can't make a leap that's too big for users away from what they already know and still be seamlessly successful for the users. So the approach that we're taking is make it feel very familiar yet new.
Welcome to a new episode of XR and AI Spotlight, the show that gives the stage to the founders and makers pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. My name is Gabriele Romagnoli, I'm your host, and I'm here today with John Dagdalen. John is the founder of Fluid, an app that turns your VR headset into a spatial computer. Spatial computing and productivity are hot topics, with various hardware and software players trying to crack the code and get the love of professionals who want to be more productive in XR. But I and the hundreds of stellar reviews on the Meta Store guarantee you, Fluid is not the typical productivity app. So today, we will learn why you should drop your multiple monitor setup and start working in a headset.
I think the biggest reason is that it lets you do it from anywhere. Right now, it's pretty difficult to get your multi-monitor setup from your couch. That's actually an experience that if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it.
How Fluid manages to stand out from its competitors.
So I would kind of classify the existing landscape of productivity apps in XR as you have like virtual monitor apps. And then there are other apps, they're leveraging the features of XR more purely, I would say. Fluid, we're kind of like in between those two.
And how the team is reimagining productivity in XR powered by AI.
Input is really important. Like how do you interact with the app or with the XR device that you're using? And so we put a lot of attention into making sure that the input works really well. And we're leveraging some of the new AI technologies to make it really easy to do that without having to interact with the physical device as well.
But before we get into it, I wanted to thank our sponsor Meshy, who made this episode possible. Meshy is a real powerhouse for generating 3D assets with AI. You can start with a simple text or image prompt and get high-quality stylized 3D models in just a minute. One feature I personally love is the ability to create stylized texture for any mesh, with or without UV. And since the release, Meshy's teams keep pushing amazing updates like texture inpainting, ultra-realistic sculpture, and the ability to rig and animate your character. To try it out, go to meshy.ai and start the 7 days trial to access all these incredible features. And now, it's time to roll the title and welcome John under the spotlight. So, John, it is a real pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having me. That was a nice intro. Thank you so much.
So, I want to start with what usually is the toughest question, right? So,
Sure.
Me as a professional, why should I give up my multi-monitor setup to go work in VR?
I think the biggest reason is that it lets you do it from anywhere. So right now, it's pretty difficult to get your multi-monitor setup from your couch. And that's actually an experience that if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. Being able to relax while you're getting some stuff done and have flexibility of, being anywhere in your house or anywhere out in the world from a hotel room or from your car if you have to do it. So yeah, that's like the biggest, I think, advantage of being able to do it with XR.
So when you look a bit at Fluid, right, and other productivity apps, how does that compare, right? And I think also maybe what we should also start discussing a bit is what is productivity, because that might means different things to different people. So
Sure.
Can you maybe unpack that for us? Like what is productivity and how does that differ it being done on different platforms?
Sure. For me, productivity is the feeling of what you want to accomplish just flowing out into the world. And so whatever is impeding that is a barrier to productivity. So if you feel friction to doing the work you need to do, or you feel distraction, or you feel like you don't have the tools at hand that you need in the moment, all of that stuff is what we want to we want to reduce all of that friction and make it so that you can go and just get in the zone and go purely from your creativity out into, the document you're working on, or the piece of art you're creating, or the conversation you're having. And that's the goal of Fluid, is to make it seamless that your thoughts can become reality. And in comparison to other apps, so I would kind of classify the existing landscape of productivity apps in XR as you have like virtual monitor apps, which are kind of like virtual desktop, immersed. There's apps like vSpatial and others that let you stream a PC or a Mac to a virtual display. And then when you interact with it, usually you're interacting inside the boundaries of that display. And then there are other apps kind of like Soft Space and maybe I would put Shapes XR in there that are kind of like they're rethinking, what does it mean to be a piece of productivity software? They're leveraging the features of XR more purely, I would say. So they're not creating as many virtual displays, but they're creating an experience that is 3D and allows you to express creativity or thoughts through that. Fluid, we're kind of like in between those two, where we want to give you a lot of the same affordances and user experience that you get on a laptop or a desktop, but we want it to be a more spatially native version of that experience. So you can create virtual windows like the same way that you have an application on your computer and it lives inside of the display. In Fluid, windows live inside of 3D space around you, and you can move them around and position them and make them exactly how big or small or tall that you want them to be. And then when you interact with them, you can do it with a keyboard and mouse, which is our preferred way to do it. And so it's like the same experience that you're kind of used to using a normal desktop computer or laptop, but it's spatial. And then so it's not about streaming your computer; it's about being your computer, like a new version of what a computer is going to be.
And I have to say, indeed, that when trying it, the first thing when I connected the mouse is, okay, is the mouse going to go from one window to another? Let me see. And then it does. I'm like, oh, yes, that's what I wanted. That's what I expected. I want to discuss more about the feature of Fluid. But before that, there is an important side that is like about your definition of productivity, right? You said it's when you get to accomplish your goal without barriers and without frictions. And you brought up also different aspects of what that could mean, right? Sometimes when I try to think about these productivity apps, I try to think about tasks grouped in categories, right? One being, for example, consumption, right? So when I'm looking at something, reading, watching a video, and then is production when I'm actually need to add input to it. And that's, for example, like indeed, it could be a pen, a mouse, a keyboard, a physical piece of paper, right? And then there is another aspect that is communication, because that is also an important side that somehow feels disconnected. I mean, it is part of it. They all work together, but it feels belongs to a different category. So how do you see these three things merging together? And do we even want them to merge together? Because communication app and meeting apps might be different from something that allows you to just stream or consume content. How do you see this?
So the way you laid it out is very similar to how we lay it out at Fluid too, and internally, how we have discussions about like where are we in the feature set that we wanted to create. So that's really cool. So we think about it the same way, so that there are types of tech activities where you're passively consuming information, or you're doing research, or you're trying to like find something or read something, and it's coming into your brain. And then there's other tasks where you're trying to create something or express ideas or something that's coming out. And so in the first case, it's a lot about the visual input. And part of the reason I wanted to build Fluid in the first place, I started working on the app, is that I just wanted to have a bunch of stuff around me so that I could grab it all in and then put it into one place. So I was writing my PhD thesis, and I had all the research papers I had written during the years of my PhD, and I needed to put them in a single format of my thesis and turn that in and be done. And I was like frustrated that I couldn't just have all my papers around me and then pull stuff out of one and another and then put it into the main document. So like that's kind of the genesis of Fluid. And then on the production side, input is really important. Like how do you interact with the app or with the XR device that you're using? And so we put a lot of attention into making sure that the input works really well. And we're leveraging some of the new AI technologies that have been developed in the last couple of years to make it really easy to do that without having to interact with the physical device as well. And then on the collaboration side or the communication side, we want to make it as easy to interact with people you're trying to collaborate with or be with. Make that as easy as if they're sitting next to you at the same table or on the same couch. So our philosophy behind it is that we're still not quite where we want to be on this yet, but everything should be shareable by default so that you can just turn it on a window or turn it on in a space. so that you can feel present with the person that you're with, because being able to communicate non-verbally is very important in a lot of our interactions with each other, and we want to enable people to be able to do that. But having the same environmental context is important to that too, because if I point to something, you're going to look to it, and if there's nothing there, that disconnects you, right? That adds friction to the thing that you're trying to accomplish together. And so we want to make it so that people can share anything, that they can share context about anything, that they can communicate verbally, non-verbally, and that if I have a file I'm working on, I want to be able to just give it to you, like hand it to you, and now you're working on it, right? It shouldn't feel like, oh, let me email that to you, and then we have like 2 minutes of you trying to like open your email and download it, and that all of that is impeding the ability for us to do what we want to do with technology.
So you touched on one that I think is I wouldn't say the elephant in the room, but that is like inputting content, like adding stuff to it, right? And that is still being a major pain in VR in many different ways. So you mentioned about you can connect a keyboard, you can connect a mouse, but I know and I've tested that there are other ways in which you are making that process more seamless. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So we didn't invent this like speech to text, but we do think we have some interesting approaches to it that I haven't really seen in other apps yet. Maybe they exist, but I haven't experienced it. So right now, I think everyone is familiar who have used XR up to this point with the click into a text box and then hit some button on the keyboard that activates speech to text, and then it you say it and then it finishes and then it types it in. In our app, what we've done is we've made it so that if you're using a controller, you point at the text box you want text in, you push a button, you hold it down, you say what you want to be in there, and you let go, and it appears there. So we've removed a couple steps in that process, and it's also direct interaction instead of indirect interaction. So instead of looking down to a keyboard in order to get text in, you look at the thing where you want the text to be in, and you just say it. And then when you're using hands, if you just pinch into it, in our app, you click by pinching, but you just pinch and hold in a text box and start talking, and then it appears in there. So we call that flow typing. We're really proud of kind of that user interaction mechanic. And I think more apps should do similar things. I think it would be just largely better. We're experimenting with more of my background, which is language technology stuff. So having a language model or an assistant that you can just talk to and express what you want to have happen. So hey, can you show me pictures of Finland? I'm trying to plan a vacation. And it will actually interact with the internet for you and pull up pictures of Finland instead of you having to tell it, go to Google. Okay, now type in this box, pictures of Finland, and now go to the images. It's just going to directly do those things for you, so that we're, the input to the system is actually just your intent. You just explain what you want to have happen, and it does it for you, rather than you have to manually do all of the different stuff. And then similarly, if you're writing an email, you can, go ahead. You have a question, follow up?
No, because sorry, because there is a lot going on, and I think we are gonna go in another direction. It's still very interesting. I have another question. So first of all, regarding the initial input. So what I specifically like is how clear it is when something is being recorded. Like that little red dot next to the cursor. I think it's just genius compared to some other pop-up and clouds that appear in the middle of the 3D space. It's not clear when am I listening, am I not listening? Well, instead you connect the input being either the trigger or the pinch to that red dot. You collect. When you switch off, I'm stopped being listened, right? And that might seem stupid, but it's not. So everybody should try it because I think it's very well made.
Yeah,
I do have a question though. How do you help users discover it?
Yeah, so that's something that we struggle with a lot as an app with a lot of features. How do you help people figure these things out? So what I think it's going to be for anyone that is looking for just generic advice on this, I would say it depends on app to app. But what we're doing is we're trying to make a lot of content on our YouTube and social media channels just about the app, so that it's being a fluid user is more than just you click download and then you're in it by yourself in a lonely experience. We're trying to create a community where these things just are ambiently seen, and so that you can discover them by seeing other people use them or by watching it in our video that you just see me do it and you're like, oh, you can do that, right? So that's kind of the strategy we're taking is build a community where people like hanging out together. So for example, every Friday, the developers, all the developers of the app, we just get in one of the shared rooms and we say, anyone that wants to talk to us can just come and talk to us. And then everyone is in there together and we're just showing people the new stuff we've added, or we're having general discussions. And more experienced users are going to be in the same room as new users. And so they'll see the experienced users just doing that, right? And they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing that?" Right? And so that we want to make it so like a community learning process. I think that's the best way that we can very quickly educate people on a complicated product. We also have extensive documentation docs that people can look at as well. It's kind of like a book, and so we're just trying to make as many different ways that people can discover this stuff as possible.
Because it's so challenging all the time. You can put all the efforts in something, and having a feature self-discoverable, it is very hard often, because you rely on input controllers, a new way to interact that might not be always well known or explained. I think it's challenging. It is a challenge everybody is still struggling with, and since we were still in the topic of input, right? One of the question is that Logitech has released this MX ink, right? That is this pen that allows to write either on a surface, pressure sensitive, allows you to write in 3D space. Do you think that might add value to a productivity experience in either VR or mixed reality? What are your thoughts?
So I do. We when I saw the announcement of that, I was wondering what it was. Like, was it just a Quest controller with a different form factor? What affordances does it have? And then they asked us if we wanted one early, and I said, we have so much we're trying to do right now that like we just didn't have the time to like get it out within the next month, and so they're trying to prioritize people that needed it right away. So I said, just give us a little bit of time, but we're going to definitely integrate it. When you're working with another person, I think this is the specific use case that I think is the most applicable right away for Fluid and for similar apps. I can't tell you how many times I have to go to a whiteboard and draw something out to get my idea across to someone else, because when you're communicating, sometimes visuals are really important, and trying to create those with a keyboard and mouse or with just your hands or something can actually be pretty challenging, and maybe isn't the best way. So in the first, straightforward use case that I see that would benefit people is being able to just whiteboard something with someone else on a table surface or on a wall surface. And from what I can tell, that device is really successful at that. I've even seen people using it, like they're drawing on a piece of paper, like very small, normal handwriting size, and it is tracked perfectly, and it looks great. And so I think I think Logitech did an amazing job with that device, and I'm really excited to give it a try and then integrate it into Fluid.
Yeah, and also the whole user experience, then it becomes another interesting thing to tackle, right? Because do you want indeed to write on a flat surface, but maybe if you are again in a couch doing some work done, as you mentioned before, then maybe you don't want that. But then you might wonder, would you use a pen in that situation? Maybe you wouldn't. There is also so much, is there something needed to be working everywhere, every time? So I think that's another interesting challenge there.
Yeah, I think designers are also going to be able to use these. So for example, in Fluid, you could open up like a web-based Photoshop kind of type app and be able to just, work on a piece of art or something with that input mechanism, which is, I think most artists prefer having a stylus of some sort. And right now, that's kind of the best way to do that in XR, I think.
That's another interesting point, so instead of using your Wacom tablet or whatever you have, then you have that pen, and then you can kind of like having a Photoshop or one other tool within a VR experience have that creative input.
Yeah, or just be able to draw it. Like if you're reviewing some art, if you're an art director or something, you can just draw straight on the web page or something like that, of displaying like the image that someone is showing you, which they kind of do right now. Like I did a lot of interviews with people from the video games and movie industry for another idea I was looking into a couple of years ago, and I learned a lot about their creative process from that experience. And so I think that these devices giving people more flexibility on how to input into XR apps is going to just be like everyone you add adds even more value to the platform as a whole. And so I'd love to see more people come up with neat input devices. I have a friend, Ricky, who is making a ring that has a mouse built into it and taps and gesture into it. And that's also really interesting as like a potential input device. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that. There's something also similar to what I think it was. I don't know if it was Sony or Samsung. They also have. I've seen their headset they released, announced a few months ago, and had this very interesting input controller that looks like it has a bit of a swipe, a little bit of a pointing, and stick stuff. That was another interesting thing that I haven't tried yet.
Another interesting thing that I've recently got exposed to, and I think is really good. Have you tried the Xrail Ultra and the Beam Pro?
No.
So for everyone's context, the Xrail is an AR headset. It has a smaller field of view, but it looks like a pair of glasses. I left mine at home today. I can't show you, sorry. But it looks like a pair of Ray-Bans, kind of. A little bit chunkier and has interesting lenses on the inside. But their compute unit, the newest one, is basically like a mobile phone. It has a touchscreen on top, and you plug the glasses into it, and then you have a spatial UI for the phone, which is kind of cool. And it has a touch surface on it, like a normal phone. So when you're scrolling a web page, you just scroll like on a phone. And that, I think that tops touch surface with scrolling and swiping in a thing that you're holding in your hand and you can point with is actually a really interesting input control scheme that I haven't seen before, at least not in that format. I think like the phone shape is probably wrong. It should be a little thinner. Like more like a remote control for a TV or something, but something of that form factor with a touchscreen on it, and maybe also like stylus mode where you can use it like the MX Ink, I think could be super interesting for kind of productivity type or like more lightweight input stuff.
Yeah. Since we are still like a bit of a brainstorm in the input mode, I also wonder if there would be ways, for example, to use the pen not as a pen. So, like, what if hold, like the kind of like the precision hold, you have the power hold, right? How you handle different kind of tools, right? So that could be, for example, like a laser pointer if it's handled differently, if it's held differently, or it could be like something that you use to swipe something, right? That is maybe. So I'm also curious because I don't think we should always stick to how we expect things to necessarily work, but we should take advantage of that digital layer that they bring in, right? So I'm really curious to see what people are going to come up with once this reaches the market and people can actually freely ideate on this new controller input method.
Right? And I think also there's an opportunity to attach them to other devices. So like if you wanted to attach the I've seen people do this with Quest controllers and stuff, but like you attach it to a steering wheel.
I think.
Your thing. I would love to see the companies making XR hardware intend for that to happen, right? Like make a little like thing like the size of this microphone that's tracked or maybe even self-tracked that you can attach to objects and then gives you those now in XR so that we don't have to do it with computer vision. It can just be, as a thing of a known shape and you put it within a known position and now you have that thing in XR. I think that would enable a lot of things, especially in training, which is actually a pretty successful use case of XR right now. That would enable a lot of experiences that aren't possible right now.
I wanted to have a quick break to remind you that if you like this conversation, you should check all past episodes at xraispotlight.com. Also, if you don't want to miss anything, remember to subscribe to the XR AI Spotlight newsletter, and you will immediately get an updated list with over 200 mixed reality apps you can filter from various fields, weekly in-depth interviews, and one product spotlight personally tested by me right in your mailbox every week. And now, let's get back to the show.
So I think we discussed about enough about input. And before moving back also to that AI potential, I want to discuss another point that you briefly mentioned, being the collaboration, right? Being together, you say you have this hangout. And I think it's very different ways, right? So there is a way of hanging out. There is a way of giving a presentation that is very different, again, from having a Zoom call or a brainstorm. So how do you see that being implemented in Fluid? Are all those way of communicating made equal and being implementable in the same way in a productivity platform?
Yeah, I think that there's kind of two approaches to this, and the first one is kind of what we see more normally right now, which is a piece of software that's built for a specific type of use case. So, for example, we're on a platform that allows for, I think it's specifically for podcast recording, right? So, it has video call and audio and information and stuff. I think the other way is the one that we're trying to approach, which is you build the core building blocks of experiences, and you make them like mix and match so that people can construct their own experience as they need it. So what we imagine are the core building blocks of collaboration in XR is shared content, like shared windows that you can put anything in, the other person sees it, and that can either be in the same place for you and them, so like relative to the virtual world that you're in, or totally like independent, so that you can put a window over here and I can put it over here, but it's the same content. Audio communication and some sort of avatar, that's the next piece that you need, so people can hear each other and see each other and gesture to each other. Locomotion, so movement, how do you move around a space? So for example, if you wanted to create a presentation, you'd have everyone sit on one side and then somebody in a different spot with a shared window that's both in the same place so that they can gesture to it. So we're trying to create all the building blocks of this. We also have a room system. So what this allows you to do is have control over who's in it or not. So you can make a room that is just you and another person and only share that code with another person, or you can make a room that's open and public and anybody can join. And then the type of content that you would show in those different scenarios would be different. So we give you full control over these types of basic building blocks so that you can construct the collaborative experience that makes sense for your use case. Yeah.
And I think whenever I think about this, right, there are different. It feels like, okay, you go, we give you the tool, and then you go ahead and figure it out. And on the other hand, when you're giving a presentation, for example, right, because that's one of the things that you do in meetings, you're sharing, one person sharing informations with multiple others for, let's say, a reasonable amount of time, being, for example, those 15 minutes where I'm talking and you're listening. Imagine. So in that case, and then you transition to what is, for example, a conversation based, right? Mm-hmm. So those are kind of different, because in the conversation, you want people to be physically, let's say, around a table of some sort, right? Mm-hmm. While instead, when you want to have a presentation, you want one person that is, for example, adjacent to the content that's being presented, and the others maybe are in front watching or listening. Now, is that something that you let the users manage by themselves, or you somehow facilitate these shifts in the meeting modality?
Yeah, so we do that in a couple ways right now. One, the main environment that people are put into right now in multiplayer, as we call it, it has different areas that suit different use cases. So there's one area that's good for group conversations. Everyone's in a circle. There's another area where all the seats are kind of in one row, and then there's an area where you could put content to present it, and there's a seating area that's kind of in front that allows you to like sit there and talk to people. And then there's an upstairs area with a table. It's kind of like a small group session, group discussion where you're all sitting around a smaller table. And then we have a lot more environments in the works now. We have one that's really good for watching movies with friends in a kind of cozy room. And all of this is born from like feedback we've been getting from our users in our Discord, who explain their use case, and then we try to figure out, okay, how could we facilitate people constructing this use case? So one of the users is actually running trading classes, like stock trading classes, out of the app. So they all join together, and then he shows them charts and how to analyze them, and then everyone practices on their own. And he's built some sort of online platform that he uses to train people, but we're just kind of like the classroom environment that it happens in. And so one of the environments we're working on now is a classroom sort of setup, so that there are tables where 3 or 4 people, probably 4, can sit in a little group. Everyone can see a main display area where the instructor would be, but they can also have like breakouts with each other. Eventually, we want to get to the point where you could import your own environments and stuff, and then those could be shared. And that's longer term stuff, but yeah.
So the other thing is that you guys also support mixed reality, right? Fully. And I think you also go beyond that. You provide even, for example, some mixed reality windows within a virtual environment that the user can position in different space. So if I'm on my desk, I can see the cup with tea on my desk because I have like a portal then I can grab. So I was wondering also, how much do you see people using that in mixed reality maybe? And even since we have been talking about collaboration, how do you see that happening in mixed reality? Do you expect a difference since you rely on environment in a way to indeed facilitate these kind of interactions?
Yeah. I think that so mixed reality is really important. I think it's going to be like table stakes for any XR device going forward. So the first thing is that like sometimes you need to interact with the real world while you're in a virtual experience. And so having a portal to a desktop where you can see your mouse and keyboard and your coffee and stuff, that's important. The other side is maybe you want to be in full mixed reality, but have some virtual content like the virtual windows or something like that. And the collaboration like dimension kind of throws a wrench in all of it, right? So if you have like 60 people in a space, like virtual space, and then you turn on pass through, where should they go, right? Like these kinds of questions are still kind of up in the air for productivity XR right now. How we're thinking about it right now is that when you're in the same room as real people, and you're all using XR devices, you probably want to be in mixed reality and have the content be virtual, but have the room be real, because you can just interact, like you can look at each other and talk to each other. You don't need an avatar when your body is in the same room as someone, right? So that's kind of the focus we're doing on the mixed reality side of, if everyone is present, the mixed reality experience should probably be everyone should have the content in the same spots, right? So that's where we're going towards. And then if you're on the fully virtual side, probably the content should just be fully virtual, and you should enable people to kind of be present in this virtual space with each other, rather than have to try to bring in too much of the real world from everyone's space, because everyone has a different space they're in. The tricky part is where you have a couple people in the real space together and a couple people who are virtual. I've seen some demos of stuff that is kind of interesting where you can have this like hybrid approach, but I would say it's still up in the air and everything's still on the table. We're still figuring that use case out. We have so much to do on just the other two sides that we're gonna be pretty busy. Yeah.
And this is the point, right? I think I have the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the Fluid is, let's say, solo first, right? So I want to be productive, and then I can have a seldom, but it's not a meeting app, right? That wouldn't. I feel, and correct me. I mean, I might have got this wrong, but it's also a matter of prioritizing, right? And what people are doing. Are people mostly meeting, or are people mostly being productive, working, or consuming content, creating content? That is, I think, steers in which direction this goes.
Yeah, we're focusing first on making the personal experience really good, and then it becomes just a question of like, how do you then make this stuff that you love about the solo experience? How do you make that seamlessly shared with other people?
And what part of it?
Yeah, what parts of it? The other approach you could take, which is like we're purely a meeting app, but then you're boxing yourself into only being useful when people are trying to meet with others in XR. And I don't think that I don't think our world is there yet. XR is still pretty, it's kind of niche still. So like not everybody has a VR headset or wants to use one to do work stuff. So what the approach that we're kind of taking is make a really good like experience that you can do with yourself. Make that the highlight. Make a pretty good experience where you can share with others, and then continue to improve that over time. But like make sure that the solo experience is amazing. And then what we want to do is enable ways of interacting with people who aren't in XR through the solo experience in a way that facilitates the stuff that you'd want to do. So for example, like if you're working in an app and you get a call on Slack, you can just open that call in Fluid. You don't have to like go shut the app down and then take the meeting on your laptop, right? So that's the kind of stuff that we want to enable. And then also making a version of Fluid that can run on this is all kind of up in the air idea stuff right now, but we do want to make like some sort of desktop experience for Fluid that is just 2D, so that somebody can see the value of what you're doing and see what, like you can just share your windows as if you would if they're in XR, but they're on a web browser or something. So I think that would be a good way to bridge the two sides.
Absolutely. And we're going to go back to some of these AI use cases, I promise. I just had I had a question before I forget. Being workrooms,
Mhm.
I'm talking the app from Meta, and I was wondering if you have recently tried it, and what was your impression? Because for people that might not know, so it was a rather featured app with whiteboards, with sticky notes,
Mhm.
and different layers in which people could interact, and it was severely, let's say, stripped down,
Mhm.
and not just in terms of features, but also the name now is Workrooms Beta, so
Mhm.
indicating some kind of like change in the strategy, certainly internally. I was wondering if you had any thoughts, or if you managed to try it before, try it after. What do you think?
Yeah, I tried it before they stripped down those features, but I didn't really try those features. So I think like the reason they probably did it would be that they just weren't getting used that much, would be my guess,
You see?
and that they wanted to focus on the stuff that people were getting a lot of value from right away and make their strengths even stronger, and then figure out how to expand the capability set. That'd be my guess. Just thinking about how would I approach that. Um, so one of the reasons that like I so when I before I made Fluid, I tried all the different apps I could find for productivity and stuff, and almost all of them were the streamed computer one. And I found that the latency, like I had my mouse and keyboard connected to the computer because you couldn't connect them to the headset and then have it pass through to the computer. And the latency of my mouse was just constantly like micro distracting me, uh, enough to pull me out of the flow state that I wanted to achieve. And so that was like so frustrating. And that's why we went for a standalone approach with Fluid, is that there's no latency between when you move your mouse and when it moves in the world, because it's running on the device that you're
Yeah.
wearing. It doesn't have to send the input to a computer, then generate a frame, compress the frame, send it back to your headset, decompress the frame, and then show it to you, which takes some time. And I think that there's value in that. I do think that the headset right now, like they can be limited, right? The stuff that you can run in Fluid is not the same capability set as a desktop computer. We want to bridge that gap. We have ideas of interesting ways that we can do that. But I think like the end state of all of this is that like the XR devices start displacing laptops, and I think Meta sees this too. I think like they're very interested in the XR for work approach, and the workrooms experience. I think they did a lot of experimentation with it, and they found what was popular with users, popular, and I think that they sort of have a better idea of what they want to focus on, I guess.
So there is one element that you were saying, and being also the sort of like form factor, right?
Right.
And I felt you were hinting a bit about also the headset changing, right? So do you see also Fluid running on, for example, AR glasses, something that is AR first? And what would you need in order to consider porting to a platform like that? And I'm not just talking about technical requirements. I mean,
Yes.
it might be like user adoption. It could be price point.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you would need to consider in order to port Fluid to another device that is not a Quest, and that maybe it's an AR first piece of art?
Yeah, sure. I think one thing that a lot of people get the impression that we're like a big team with lots of developers, but it's actually just four of us, um, and we're very small still. We don't have that many resources, so we have to pick and choose what we work on very carefully because we just don't have enough time to do everything we'd want to do. Like the exercise that we're going through right now is that we have a pile of really important stuff, and we have to choose the stuff that's more important than the other really important stuff, and then not do some of the important stuff that we want to do. And it's painful that we see these gaps or bugs, but we just have to we have very limited time in the day to work on stuff. So to justify working on a platform, we have to be able to know that we're going to get enough users on that platform to make sense for us. We also have to know that like the effort to make the app itself is going to let us make something that's new and useful to like our mission. So those are the like kind of things that we have to consider. So like if it's very technically difficult but doesn't get us like more than 100 users, probably not going to be something that we can afford to do. Whereas like there are platforms that I think are newer, that would be valuable for us to be on. just because I think that we could do something really interesting that has not been seen before on those.
For
Especially
example,
on the AR side, right? The
yeah.
AR.
But for example, do you mention some AR devices specifically?
I won't mention yet publicly right
Okay.
now. We're still talking with companies, but I think that a AR form factor headset, which is lightweight, small, comfortable, can be worn for a long time and worn in public without any kind of odd looks. That's a really interesting platform. Even if it doesn't quite have all the users now, I think it will in a year or two. And so that's probably where we're going to look at. There are other existing kind of like VR headsets or mixed reality headsets that we want to be on because there are a lot of people on those platforms who need something like what we're making. And so those will probably come as well. But yeah, there's also a third case, which is companies that are making VR headsets or mixed reality headsets who are willing to let us be a little bit more integrated into the operating system. So right now, Fluid on Meta's headset, we're limited in what we can do. We're not allowed to close other applications or open other applications, for example, like you would on like we'd want to. Like we'd love to be able to launch and manage 2D applications so that you could install like sideload apps, like a game like Doom or something onto your Quest and then play it in 2D inside of Fluid, things like that. But there are smaller headset companies that are willing to let us do that, and so that might be something that's interesting to us because we could create an experience that's not possible on the other platforms.
Yeah. So I want to go back to what, because we took a detour because of me. Apologies, John. So you were starting discussing about the different ways in which AI could, for example, be integrated. And one you mentioned indeed text to speech with this very nice and intuitive user experience, user interface. You mentioned about, hey, bring me some photos of for my holidays, about Spain. Now, would those photos appear as sort of like objects in the space, or they will be still within a window? Maybe how do you see that experience and that collaboration with AI taking place?
So it's still work in progress. So it could take a lot of different forms. We're still experimenting with stuff. I think the general approach that we take, our philosophy, is that you can't make a leap that's too big for users away from what they already know, and still be like seamlessly successful for the user. So like if you have to train them or it's really different than what they're used to, people have trouble kind of figuring out how to use that tool in their daily life. So the approach that we're taking is make it feel very familiar yet new. And so if you had a friend and you said, hey, can you show me some pictures from this place that you went of cool things that I should see when I go, probably what they're going to do is open up Google Photos and Google some specific things and show you, right? So that's the kind of approach that we're trying to take is make it so that the computer is doing things for you the way that you would do them for yourself in a way. And instead of having it create like an image cloud or something, that might be a bit too far from what we're used to. Now, maybe in 5 years, as people got used to that version of AI showing them stuff, they may be ready to make the jump to, I want to be surrounded by content and have it like Minority Report style, like surround me and move it around and stuff. But I don't think we're quite there yet as just like the technology tech tree. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And I mean, you could easily build this image cloud that wouldn't be a problem from a technical perspective. But then again, are we ready to do that? What are we going to do? Are we going to then be overwhelmed and so on? And there is always this cool idea, but then probably the closer path to success is something that is progressive improvement or something that we're already doing. So I think it does sounds like makes a lot of sense. And
I always ask myself the question, like, can my mom use this? Right? Like, is she going to get intimidated and stressed out by trying to use this thing? Right? So she knows how to use a computer, so a keyboard and mouse, and asking something to open Google for her, she kind of, she's able to do it. So, yeah.
So are there other ways in which you think or you see AI being implemented, maybe on the shorter term, or would be something that is on the longer term? Because indeed, there could be so many different ways that I think you guys have put quite some thought on it.
Yeah. So one thing, AI features that we have right now that I think everyone should try out, especially while they're free. So we don't charge for this right now. You can make worlds. So you just can open the environment settings, and there's a button you can click where it goes into create like a skybox, and you can type whatever you want, and there are advanced features for choosing art styles and that kind of stuff. And so we're leveraging the image generation tech that's been developed over the last couple of years to allow you to customize the experience to give you the kind of environment that you're comfortable in or feel creative in. And it mixes stuff that's hand designed by artists and then stuff that's designed by you in a way that like leverages the strengths of both. So we love like really hand created artistic expression, and then we want to give the user the ability to leverage AI to add their own element to that. So that's one side, the skybox creation. I think the generation of 3D assets is going to get really good really fast, just my knowledge of how the machine learning landscape is happening. And so I think that's going to be important. If you wanted to generate a specific room layout or a piece of furniture or something, probably eventually we'll give people the ability to do that. And then having that stuff be shared too is really cool. That collaborative creative process is nice. So we want to make all of it networked so that when you create a skybox in a room with another person, they see that too, and then you guys can riff on that.
Right.
And then on the kind of language technology or like meta model that's running in the app, giving the app the ability to understand, what are you trying to accomplish and how can it facilitate that. So one kind of fun thing that we're trying to enable is you can ask the assistant to keep you on task. So you said, hey, I'm trying to, get some work done right now. Please, stop me if I get distracted. And so when it detects that you opened YouTube cat videos, it's like, hey, you had talked about wanting to be productive right now. Like, do you really need this break? Stuff like that. So it feels like that you have a friend in there with you rather than like some kind of AI overlord that just sets timers or something.
Even though since you guys have paid so much attention to the user experience, I'm curious, how do you embody this Pasty Reminder in the space? Is that like an agent? Is that like a voice god? Is that a pop-up that it doesn't feel human? So how do you think of adding that into the experience?
So we're still experimenting with this, so it might change in the version that people try out. But right now, it is a interdimensional hypercube that sits in the space with you. So it has a physical shape, but it has a cool animation, and it looks interesting. And then when it's listening to you, it looks different. When it's like saying stuff, it looks different. So you get feedback on like, did it hear you? Did it understand you? Is it going to say something? And then when it interacts with the app, it has. You know that it's interacting basically on your behalf, that kind of stuff. And then we have ways of showing and hiding it, and a gesture for bringing it into the world. So it's not always present. It's only when you want it. You can also just tell it go to sleep, and it does. So
that's interesting. I think we're gonna get so much, especially because when they start, let's say, learning and there is that interaction going on in meaningful ways. Of course, this is being let's say basic or an initial experimentation, but you could think of them, for example, learning from a meeting you have got, or from a document that you wrote, or an email. So it could be someone that is next to you that you could always talk, and then could over spatialize. Hey, what was the email that I sent? Boop, yeah, of course. And then a new Windows appears with that email. Of course, I mean, this is something that it's an evolution. It's not going to happen in a matter of 1 or 2 weeks. But that's, I think, the exciting part, because that when these things, both the 3D and the AI part, start making sense and adding value to each other.
And I think, so a lot of companies are trying to do this like assistant stuff. Apple, Google, Samsung, everybody is trying to charge towards this future where you can talk to your phone and it does things for you. The one thing that I think is unique about our industry is that XR, like, rules get thrown out the window a lot of times. That stuff that works on a phone does not work in XR, and vice versa. So our approach is going to be one that we're going to try to leverage or make an experience that is meant to be experienced in XR, and isn't just like a direct copy over from something you do on your phone. And I think the spatial aspect of it is really important. So the fact that it's opening things in a logical place, or it's putting them in your, like your downloads folder, for example, but you see it happen, right? So there's like a lot of stuff that we have to do to make it feel like a cohesive experience and not just ChatGPT bolted onto like whatever X other thing, which is kind of like how people are doing it right now, where you have a chat window that pops up in the corner or something, and then you can talk to it, but it doesn't really have any power or specific knowledge. It's just ChatGPT more conveniently there. That's not what we want to create. We want to create something that, like, there's that utility aspect of this, of the Fluid Assistant, as we're calling it, but also there's an opportunity that, like, have you ever watched the Lo-Fi Girl stream on YouTube? It's just like a music stream. And the thing is, it's like there's like a chat, and you feel like you're not alone. A lot of people put that up to just feel like they're doing homework, but like they're not alone. And so I think that the AIs can also serve this function a little bit, which is you just don't feel like you're quite alone when you're working. So you can stay focused, but there's a little bit of connection to, and it doesn't have to be like high touch, real socialization. It could just be like, yeah, there's a cat here and the cat can actually like react to your input, and it's not just like a pre-built animation or something. Like, it could have some intelligence to it. So I think there's like lots of wacky directions that XR is going to go with
Absolutely.
this.
I had not long ago a conversation with a developer that was using AI to, let's say, code Beat Saber, and it was like this conversation. But one of the things that came up over and over during the conversation, and I suggest you to check the episodes because it's a lot of fun and there's a lot to learn from it. It's like he felt like that through the process, he was kind of like not doing this alone. Right. And I'm not sure how to interpret this, right? And because the line can be crossed very easily to a place where maybe we don't want to be, but I think it certainly can add an element that has, again, a spatial meaning. That is not just having a chatbot and a bunch of chat lines, but something that meaningfully interacts, maybe keeps you maybe entertained, focus, or can help you. It can be anything at that point.
Yeah. So I think giving our tools personality is going to be nice. Like, you just feel like a more warm relationship with the tool you're using, rather than like, yeah, this is my girlfriend and they don't exist. Like, I don't think that's
exactly
great, but we do want to create the sense that like the app is aware of you and like is a collaborative partner with you, rather than just a tool. Like, there's a little bit of personality there. That's what we want. That's our goal.
John, thank you very much. I think it was an incredible conversation. I learned a lot, and I am going to go back and try the Skybox, AI Skybox function, because that I missed. So I'm going back right after this to try it out. Thank you very much for all the tips, and best of luck with Fluid and with what's coming.
Thank you very much. You can find our app on the Meta Store. Go to app.fluid.so and you can get it for free.
And down in the description below as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, please leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really means a lot to me, and it's a great support for the show. Till next time.